They say the most dangerous man isn't the one with a weapon in his hand. It's the one who's been betrayed and has nothing left to lose. In a Mississippi prison built to break men, one inmate will watch his whole world crumble not from violence, but from something far more personal. A kiss, a whisper, and a secret that would ignite a double murder nobody saw coming. Coldwater State Penitentiary sits just off Highway 80 in Jackson, Mississippi, a concrete fortress wrapped in steel wire and silence. It's a place where time forgets you, where sunlight barely makes it past the walls, and where the inmates are taught one thing above all: hope is a weakness. But Malik Jennings wasn't weak. Not when he walked in with a 20-year sentence for armed robbery. Not when they threw him in Unit D, next to lifers and monsters. And not when he learned to survive without fear. Because Malik had something most men inside didn't. He had Trina, his wife, his anchor. She visited him every Sunday like clockwork, drove nearly 3 hours from Biloxi just to sit across that cold steel table and remind him he was still a man, that someone out there still loved him, still waited for him. For years, Trina kept him grounded. Her letters were poetry, her voice gospel. When everything else faded, his friends, his freedom, his future, she stayed. Loyal, beautiful, and his. But prison has a way of sharpening the senses. You learn to listen to what's not being said. You start noticing every twitch, every pause, every lie wrapped in a smile. And slowly, something shifted. It started small. She wore something more revealing. Heels too high for a prison visit, lipstick a little too bold. He thought maybe it was for him. Maybe she just wanted to feel pretty. Then came the missed phone calls, the shorter letters. The Sunday she didn't show because she was sick. Then again because her car broke down. Malik wanted to believe her. Needed to. But doubt in prison isn't just a feeling. It's a warning sign. A survival instinct. Then came the looks. Not from Trina, but from others. The guard who winked when escorting her out. The inmates who started whispering after visitation. And worst of all, Warden Dalton Reeves. A smug, middle-aged man with slick back hair, cold blue eyes, and a reputation for doing whatever the hell he wanted. Malik started noticing how Reeves lingered near the visitor room. How his eyes followed Trina, like a wolf sizing up prey. At first, Malik told himself it was nothing, that he was being paranoid, that Reeves watched all the women. But then came the night his cellmate Kenny leaned down from the top bunk and dropped a line Malik couldn't forget. "Yo, ain't that your girl I saw coming out of the warden's office? Late night. Looked real cozy." Malik didn't respond. He didn't sleep that night either. The next visit, Trina avoided eye contact. She smiled, but didn't reach her eyes. Her hands trembled when she touched his. He asked what was wrong. She said she was tired. When he pressed her, she flinched. Then a guard came mid-visit and whispered something in her ear. She got up without looking back. Malik stared at the door long after she'd left, feeling like someone had just reached into his chest and started pulling. He tried calling her the next day. No answer. Tried again the next night. Nothing. So he made another call. This time to the outside. His cousin Jay still ran the streets of Biloxi. Quick with a car, quicker with a camera. If anyone could find out what was going on, it was him. "Follow her," Malik said. "Find out who she's with." Jay didn't ask why. He didn't need to. 2 days later, he called back from a diner phone near I-55. "I saw her, bro," he said. Trina was at Coldwater. Came out the back exit. She wasn't alone. Malik's stomach dropped. It was Reeves, Jay added. Warden Reeves. Had his hand on her back like he owned her. She was Logan. Silence. Jay paused. "I'm sorry, man. I didn't want to believe it either." Malik hung up. He didn't cry. Didn't scream. He just sat on his bunk and stared at the picture of her taped to the wall. The one where she wore that yellow sundress, smiling like she had the world in her hands. Now he realized she had the world in her hands and crushes with it. In that moment, behind the bars of Coldwater, something inside Malik broke. Not like glass, but like bone. Deep, permanent. He had no freedom, no voice, no way to stop what was happening. But he had time, and time is dangerous in the hands of a man betrayed. Some men trade money for power. Others trade silence for survival. But in Coldwater State Penitentiary, Warden Dalton Reeves traded something far darker. Protection for pleasure, and Malik Jennings' wife, Trina, was the currency. What began as a few flirtatious smiles during routine check-ins evolved into something far more sinister. And it all happened just steps away from the man she promised to love forever, locked in a cell with no clue that the walls around him weren't just made of concrete. They were made of lies. Reeves had a reputation, but no one dared speak it aloud. He was a man who used his position like a weapon, not just to control prisoners, but to control everyone. Staff, guards, visitors, and women, especially women. He spotted Trina months before the affair began. Her walk, her laugh, the way she wore grief on her face and hope in her eyes. She looked too clean for the visitor room, too soft for a place that devoured faith, and that made her a target. The first time he approached her, it was under the guise of concern. "Miss Jennings," he said, stopping her near the metal detectors. "You okay? You seem tense. Anyone bothering you in here?" She smiled politely. "I'm fine, just tired. I understand. These visits can be emotionally exhausting." He stepped closer. "If you ever need to talk about your safety, your husband, anything, my door's open." He didn't press that day. Predators rarely do. They wait. They circle. Over the next few weeks, the offers grew more frequent. Subtle comments, fake empathy, and small favors. She didn't realize at first, but the warden had started to condition her. He gave her easier sign-ins. No bag checks. Private escort through the back hallway. Perks wrapped in politeness. Then one day, he asked if she wanted coffee. "In my office," he added, like it was nothing, like it was normal. Trina hesitated. She didn't want to seem rude, not the man who literally held her husband's fate in his hands. One write-up, and Malik could lose privileges. A denied parole recommendation. A transfer to a violent block. She'd seen it happen to other inmates, and Reeves made sure she knew it. The visit to his office was brief. Coffee. Conversation. He asked about Malik, how he was adjusting, whether he was treating her right. He leaned back in his chair and watched her as she answered, nodding slowly, taking mental notes. That's how it started. One visit became 2, then 3, and each time, Reeves pushed the line a little further. A brush of the hand, a compliment, a lingering stare. She told herself it wasn't a big deal. She needed this access. She needed Malik to stay safe. But one afternoon, the mask slipped. She was alone in his office again when he closed the door behind her and said, "You're a beautiful woman, Trina. You know that." She didn't answer. He stepped closer. "I could help your husband. Give him better work detail. Keep him off the warden's radar. Maybe even pull strings when it comes time for parole." His voice dropped low. But favors don't come free. Trina froze. It was in that moment that she realized this wasn't concern. This wasn't kindness. It was a transaction. An unholy one. She could walk out, report him, 'cause of scene. But then what? Who would believe her over a decorated prison official? And what would happen to Malik? Would he pay for her defiance? So she stayed quiet. And then she returned. Back inside the prison yard. Malik had no idea what was unfolding just the floor above his head. But he felt it, like a shift in gravity. Something about Trina was different. Her hugs felt shorter. Her laughter had hesitation in it. She flinched when he mentioned the warden's name. He didn't want to believe it. But disbelief doesn't erase truth. He kept his head down, watched, listened, and when a guard slipped up and mentioned Trina's name in passing, saying he saw her in Reeves' office on a day she wasn't supposed to be there, that's when Malik knew. She wasn't just a victim. She was involved. Willing or not, she'd stepped into the lion's den, and now she couldn't get out. For Warden Reeves, it was all about control. He paraded Trina through Coldwater like a private secret. Everyone knew. No one said a word. She was escorted in late at night when the other visitors were gone. The guards looked the other way. The cameras were mysteriously under maintenance. Sometimes, Malik could hear her heels clicking down the hallway past the cell at night. It was faint, like a ghost passing through. Other times, he'd hear laughter echoing off the cinder block walls, Reeves' deep voice and Trina's soft, nervous reply. Each sound was a dagger, and inside that prison, daggers sharpened fast. But Malik didn't explode. He didn't fight. He didn't scream. He waited. He studied the guard shifts, the visit schedules, the blind spots in the security camera system. He reached out to someone on the outside, not his cousin this time, but someone far darker, a man who owed Malik from his days in Biloxi, because Malik understood something now. This wasn't just an affair. It wasn't just betrayal. It was domination, humiliation. The warden wasn't just sleeping with his wife. He was making sure Malik knew it, making sure he couldn't do anything about it, until Malik did. As the nights got longer, whispers around Coldwater got colder. Guards started noticing missing paperwork. Security logs edited without explanation. A new visitor showing up on Malik's call list. Someone no one could trace. And Trina? She started looking over her shoulder. She started missing visits again. Something was coming. Something violent. And no one inside that prison, not even the warden, could see it. Because while Dalton Reeves thought he was in control, and Trina thought she could walk the line between survival and shame, Malik Jennings was already writing their ending. From inside a cell, with nothing but time and revenge, the body can survive almost anything. Starvation, beatings, isolation. But the heart is different. It doesn't just break. It shatters, piece by piece, quietly, until what's left beats not with love, but with vengeance. At Coldwater State Penitentiary, inside a 6x9 concrete cage, Malik Jennings wasn't counting days anymore. He was counting cracks in the wall, in the routine, in himself. Because everything he built inside to survive, his discipline, his silence, his self-control, had been built for her. For Trina, the woman who used to press her hand against the bulletproof glass, eyes wide with loyalty, promising, "I'll wait for you, Malik." Now, she was a reason he couldn't sleep. The reason his fist stayed clenched through the night. The reason he stopped praying. Malik wasn't the only one cracking. Trina's dual life was catching up to her fast. By day, she was a loyal prison wife. By night, she was someone else entirely, a woman being swallowed by shame, secrets, and the suffocating presence of Warden Reeves. What had started as manipulation had evolved into something more twisted. Now, Reeves wanted her loyalty, not just her body, not just her silence. He wanted control, full submission, no more sneaking around. He gave her cash, promised her security, talked about moving her out of Biloxi, giving her a fresh start, said Malik would never get out anyway, so why should she wait for a ghost? But even in her confusion, Trina knew this wasn't love. This was ownership, and the more she gave in, the more she lost herself. One night, after another visit cut short and another ride back to her apartment in silence, Trina finally looked in the mirror and didn't recognize her reflection. The woman staring back wore guilt like a mask, mascara smudged, eyes hollow. She pulled out an old letter from Malik, one of the first he wrote from Coldwater. In it, he called her his light in a place that's all shadow. Now she was the one casting the shadows. She thought about stopping, cutting it all off, telling Reeves she couldn't do this anymore. But fear kept her in place. What would he do to Malik if she rejected him? What would he do to her? Because Reeves didn't just break rules, he erased them. He could make a man disappear in Coldwater, make a woman vanish from the visitor logs. His power didn't come from the state. It came from people's silence. And Trina had been silent for too long. Back inside, Malik had become a ghost among the living. Inmates who once cracked jokes with him now gave him space. He didn't talk, didn't eat much, didn't write letters. But he watched, and he waited. He wasn't just hurt. He was hollowed. Every thought led back to the same image. Trina on her knees in that office, Reeves behind his desk, smug and victorious. The prison's king, feeding on Malik's pride. And then one night, the confirmation arrived. A guard, young, nervous, and too green for Coldwater. past Malik in the laundry room, and muttered something under his breath. "Your girl's here again. Warden's office. Door closed." He said like a joke, but it hit Malik like a shotgun blast. This wasn't rumor anymore. This was real. His wife. The warden. And he was supposed to just take it? No. Something inside him snapped. The next day, Malik requested chapel time. Not to pray, not to repent, but because he knew the chapel was where inmate Luis Vega worked. A former cartel runner turned self-made prophet with serious pull-inside cold water. Malik waited until the guards were distracted, then leaned in. "I need something," he whispered. Luis raised an eyebrow. "Something like forgiveness?" "No," Malik said. "Something sharp and silent." Luis didn't ask why. Men in cold water didn't ask questions. They just named prices. Meanwhile, Trina was drowning. She tried skipping visits, ignored Reeves' texts, told herself she could pull back without consequences. But Reeves wasn't a man who took no lightly. The next time she showed up, under pressure, guilt-ridden, he grabbed her wrist before she could sit. "You're pulling away," he said. "I just need space," she murmured. He smiled. That smile chilled her. "No, Trina, you need me. Don't forget who's keeping your husband safe. Don't forget who's paying your rent." She didn't respond, because she couldn't. He wasn't lying. She was trapped. That same week, Malik began preparing his move. He got transferred to janitorial duty, near administration, near the warden's office. All it took was a favor from Luis and a forged work order. He scouted routes, noted guard rotations, mapped the blind spots, and he waited for the next Thursday, Trina's usual visit day. When it arrived, it was raining, hard, the type of Mississippi storm that drowned sound, mass movement, and made even God look away. Trina entered the facility under guard escort. Malik stood 2 halls away, mop in hand, head low. When he heard the buzz of the admin wing door, he tensed. And when he saw her, really saw her, standing there in her beige trench coat, soaked to the bone, eyes darting toward Reeves' office, his chest ached, not from love, but from betrayal. And heartbreak in a place like this doesn't make you cry. It makes you kill. That night, the chapel bell rang twice, an inmate signal. Malik's message had been received. The wheels were in motion. All that was left now was blood. Coldwater State Penitentiary had seen riots before, fights, escapes, even death. But what happened the night Malik Jennings made his move was something else entirely. It wasn't loud at first. No screaming, no alarms, just the sound of rain slapping the tin roof, and one man walking down a hallway he was never meant to be in. The plan was simple, ruthless, final. Luis Vega had delivered. A makeshift shank, carved from sharpened steel hidden inside a mop handle, taped and sealed so tight it passed through 3 random searches without question. Malik walked with purpose, head down, dressed in a janitor's uniform that bought him invisibility. The same uniform guards ignored daily. The same silence that let monsters walk free behind badges. It was 8:14 p.m. when he reached the side hallway, just outside Warden Reeves' office. Inside, Trina was seated on the worn leather couch. Her coat was still damp from the rain, but her eyes were drier than they'd ever been. Dead, almost, like the soul inside her had already checked out. Across the room, Reeves poured himself a drink. Neat bourbon. The good stuff. Imported. Hidden behind a fake wall panel none of the state budget knew about. He smiled at her, a predator's grin. "You're tense tonight," he said. She didn't answer. "You should relax. Your husband's doing just fine. Still quiet. Still obedient." Trina flinched. That's when he knew. Her fear was starting to fade. And that made her dangerous. Malik counted the steps from the hall corner to the office door. 10. He paused. Listened. He could hear Reeves' voice muffled but distinct, and Trina's voice low, flat, like she didn't recognize herself anymore. Something inside Malik twisted. Not jealousy, not even anger. Something colder. He took one last breath, then opened the door. The sound of the door creaking open startled both of them. Reeves turned confused mid-sentence. What the hell? And that's when he saw Malik. Not the inmate, not the janitor. The man, the husband, the executioner. The first stab was fast, into the side of Reeves' neck. The warden stumbled back, gurgling, hands flailing, blood spraying across his desk, his bourbon glass shattering against the floor. Trina screamed, not out of fear for Reeves, but at the horror of it all crashing down, of Malik standing there, eyes empty, holding a dripping piece of steel like it had always belonged in his hand. Why? She whispered, backing into the wall. He didn't answer. He just looked at her, like she was a stranger, like the woman he'd waited for, prayed for, bled for, never existed. Reeves tried to speak, blood bubbling from his mouth as he clawed toward his desk drawer, where a hidden pistol sat beneath a stack of reports. Malik stepped on his wrist and drove the shank straight into his chest, twice, 3 times, until the body stopped moving, until the only sound in the room was Trina's gasping breath. The silence was thick, almost holy, and then Malik turned to her. She didn't run. She couldn't. Tears ran down her face, streaking mascara across her cheeks. I didn't want any of this, she said. He tilted his head. But you let it happen. She nodded, trembling. I was scared. Malik's voice was low, almost calm. So was I, every day, in that cell, not because of the other inmates, not the guards. You know what scared me most? She didn't speak. He stepped closer. Losing you. For a second, it looked like he might drop the weapon, that he might collapse into her arms, broken, betrayed, but still Malik. But that Malik was gone, replaced by a man forged in betrayal. He reached for her, slowly. She didn't flinch, and for a second, she closed her eyes, as if accepting it, as if this was the price she was ready to pay. But just before he could strike, bang, a single gunshot rang out. Trina screamed. Malik staggered back, clutching his side. A young CO, barely 25, stood in the hallway, wide-eyed, gun shaking. He'd been sent to investigate the unusual noise, and now he was staring at a scene out of a nightmare. The warden bleeding out, a woman screaming, and an inmate with blood on his hands. Malik collapsed to the ground. Trina crawled to him, sobbing. But Malik didn't look at her. He stared at the ceiling, breathing shallow. Later, the reports would say it was self-defense, that the officer had acted to protect the warden. But the truth would rot inside cold water forever. 2 dead men, 1 broken woman, and the halls still echoing with the blood no mop could ever clean. 3 weeks later, Trina stood at the gates of Coldwater, free, but not really. She watched as the ambulance drove Malik's body away. There were no family members, no funeral, no gravestone, just a bag of personal belongings, a Bible, 2 letters, and a wedding ring. She clutched it all to her chest and walked into the rain. Not as a widow, not even as a survivor, but as a woman who had loved 2 men and lost both. Inside the walls, the story morphed into legend. Inmates whispered it like gospel. How one man took back his pride. How the warden bled like anyone else. And how love, the kind built in waiting rooms and visitation booths, could become a weapon, sharp enough to cut through iron, and cold enough to kill. The bodies had been cleared. The blood was scrubbed clean. But Coldwater State Penitentiary would never be the same. The echoes of that night, of Malik Jennings' final act, didn't die with him. They spread like wildfire through corridors, across news channels, through every living room in Biloxi, Mississippi, and far beyond. Was it justice or just insanity? That question would haunt the town long after the headlines faded. News crews circle like vultures. Love triangle turns deadly behind bars. Read the first wave of headlines. Inmate murders warden over wife's affair. The public didn't know what to feel. Half the town called Malik a madman, a violent, deluded killer who couldn't accept the consequences of his own life. The other half? They saw something different. A man pushed past his limits, broken by a system, torn apart by betrayal. The kind of pain you don't recover from. The kind of rage that doesn't come from nowhere. Trina became a ghost. She left Biloxi, changed her number, didn't attend the warden's funeral, didn't speak to reporters, didn't answer the door when lawyers came knocking with lawsuits and subpoenas. For the world, she was a woman at the center of a scandal, a walking target of judgment. But for herself, she was something worse. A prisoner, not in steel bars, but in guilt, shame, and questions that wouldn't leave her alone. What if she had said no earlier? What if she had confessed to Malik the truth the first time? What if she hadn't stayed quiet? The world judged her, but not nearly as harshly as she judged herself. Inside Coldwater, a new warden was appointed within days. Gregory Tullis, hard, clean-cut, and publicly committed to restoring order. He gave a press conference declaring the situation contained and not reflective of the values of this institution. But those inside knew better. They knew that Coldwater created Malik Jennings. It caged him, starved him, watched as his wife was manipulated by a man in power. It gave him no dignity, no outlet, no justice. Until he made his own, the state of Mississippi launched an investigation. They want to know how an inmate got into the warden's private office, how he got a weapon, how he walked past 3 checkpoints without anyone blinking. The answers were embarrassing. Bribes, negligence, fear. Everyone knew Warden Reeves was untouchable. Nobody dared question his private meetings. The CO who eventually shot Malik had been on the job for only 42 days. He wasn't trained to see warning signs. He was just told to keep quiet and obey orders. The deeper the state dug, the more corruption they found. Justice didn't just die that night. It had been dying for years. And Malik Jennings? He became something more than a name. He became a symbol. To some, a violent criminal who let jealousy drive him to murder. But to others, a martyr. A man who stood up to abuse of power, who couldn't get justice. So he became it. In online forums and prison rights circles, people debated his legacy. One post went viral. If Malik had killed another inmate over drugs or gambling, nobody would care. But he killed a predator in power. And now the system wants to bury him twice. Trina eventually gave one interview. Just one. 6 months later, to a local journalist named Carmela Ricks. They met in a small diner, both looking over their shoulders. Trina's voice trembled as she stirred her coffee. I didn't love the warden. It wasn't like that, she said. It started with him helping me. Then he started touching me. Then threatening Malik. I thought I could control it, but I couldn't. Carmela asked her the question everyone wanted to know. Do you think Malik did the right thing? Trina stared out the window for a long time, then whispered he did the only thing he thought he could. Tears welled in her eyes. But the price was too high. So was it justice? Some say yes. That Malik exposed a system no one else dared to challenge. That in a place where laws failed, he enforced his own. Others say no. That love doesn't justify murder. That what happened that night was a result of unchecked emotion, not principle. That Malik was a broken man who broke others in return. In the end, there was no clean answer. Only fallout. Trina lives under a different name now, far from Mississippi. She doesn't date, doesn't talk about what happened. She keeps Malik's wedding ring in a drawer, along with the last letter he ever wrote her, the one where he said, "If they take my body, let them, but they won't take my love for you." She still reads it when she can't sleep, still hears his voice in her head, asking questions she can't answer. Coldwater remains open. The guards still walk the halls. The inmates still press their faces to the windows during visitation. But there's a chill now, in the air, in the glances. Everyone knows what happened, and they all wonder, who's next? Because when love turns into madness, and silence turns into violence, no one is safe, not even the ones in charge. And that's the story of Malik Jennings, the man who loved too hard, lost too much, and made the world listen with blood on his hands. So we ask again, was it justice or just insanity? If this story shook you, you're not alone. These aren't just tales of crime. They're warnings, whispers from the edge of sanity, and reminders of how far pain can push a person. If you want more chilling true stories that dive deep into betrayal, obsession, and justice gone wrong, hit that subscribe button, turn on the notification bell, and join us as we expose the darkest secrets hiding in plain sight. Because here on the Family Crime Exposed, we don't just tell stories, we uncover the truth.